That was an amazing NASCAR race. That's it. I could basically turn the video off right there. I mean, that was something. How's it going, you guys? My name is Eric, and welcome to Out of the Groove. I guess I can talk a little bit more about this thing, but yes, I just got done watching the Geico 500 at Talladega Super Speedway. Super is literally in that track's name, and that basically sums up what this race was today. It was super, it was stupendous, it was incredible. We're gonna talk about a few things in this race. We're gonna talk about just kind of the racing we saw, the event itself. I'm gonna look at the top finishers. A lot of underdogs had great finishes today. Gonna talk about the winner, obviously, and then at the end of the episode, I'm gonna put this race on my Groovie gauge. We're gonna talk about how entertaining this race was. Spoiler alert, you know, it was pretty high. The Groovie gauge is gonna be pretty high for this one. It's gonna be up there. But where to start with this thing? I'm not going to talk about everything that happened in this race. I'm not going to like review the race. I mean, if you watch the race, you know basically what happened. There was a pretty big wreck early on. Bubba Wallace tried to bump draft his buddy Ryan Blaney, misjudged it, caused like a 4 or 5 car wreck, knocked out some heavy hitters, Boyer, Harvick. Obviously Bubba was out at that point. But after that, I thought the cars would kind of settle down. We'd see some single file, kind of slow Talladega racing, but no. For 500 miles, or however many miles this race actually is, for 188 laps, we saw basically door-to-door action constantly. They really never got single filed out. I think there was a one point towards the end of stage 1 where they were trying to save fuel, where they were single file for about 10 laps, but even then, they had guys running out of fuel. So this race literally never had a dull moment. Like, sometimes I say that. Sometimes we say that about a sporting event. Like, oh, there was never a dull moment in that game, or never a dull moment in that race. And, you know, we say that it's hyperbolic. You know, obviously there was a couple points in that race or in that game where it wasn't super exciting, you know. But this race at Talladega actually might not have ever had a dull moment. I mean, I sat down there, and every single time Fox went to commercials, which they did quite a few times, I was like, no, come back, come back, no, don't go to commercials now, not now. They really, other than maybe during that red flag in stage 3, you know, that was the only real time I felt comfortable getting out of my seat to go, like, you know, get a drink or go to the bathroom. I never wanted to leave my seat during this race. So in a nutshell, this race at Talladega was incredible. Now remember, this was the first time in 32 years NASCAR ran a super speedway race without restrictor plates. These cars did not have restrictor plates. They did have tapered spacers on them, which was restricting the horsepower, but whereas restrictor plates in the past would usually restrict the horsepower down to like 400, 450, with the tapered spacer, horsepower for today's race was around 550. Now they did add the huge rear spoiler, you might have noticed. It was technically 9 inches tall with a 1-inch wicker bill, even, you know, disrupting the air even more to try and slow these things down. But the combination of all these aero changes created the best restrictor plate racing, I think, as a fan base we have seen since maybe the early 2000s. A lot about this race felt like a 2001-2002 super speedway race. Even Fox's coverage of it. You know, they added that new drone cam, which was kind of fun. They turned up the crowd volume towards the end when you had a big battle for the win with Chase Elliott and some of the other drivers up there. You could hear the crowd cheering. This felt like a 2001, 2002, 2003 super speedway broadcast. I know there were a lot of commercials. I'm going to defend Fox a little bit here. They did this at the Talladega race last year. There was a lot of commercials. It's just because it's on the big network Fox. Talladega races always get a lot of ratings. I think because some of the other races on the NASCAR schedule, their ratings have suffered. I think a lot of advertisers would rather spend their money on the Talladega broadcast. So I think really Fox, this is one of their money makers. Daytona 500, Talladega, and then maybe the All-Star race or the Coke 600. Those are really the money makers Fox has. So I don't blame them having to take advantage of it. They do a pretty good job of doing side-by-side stuff. They did miss a few big moments, unfortunately, but just bad timing. You know, the first big wreck happened under caution, which is just bad, not just unlucky, not Fox's fault, just unlucky. They have to they have to run commercials. Or that green flag pit stop where Keselowski slid in backwards, and Eric Jones got blocked by David Reagan for no reason. You know, that happened during commercials. So, you know, I can't blame Fox for showing commercials when they did. It's just bad timing usually. And I put out this little PSA on Twitter earlier, but you know, if you have like a laptop, if you're watching on TV and you have a laptop, go to NASCAR.com and they have NASCAR Drive or something where you can basically watch a live feed basically during the entire race, even during commercial breaks. So you don't get commentary, but you can at least watch the racing during commercial break, and it's free. So I'll throw that out there if you have like a laptop or something off to the side. That's really my big takeaway today from the big crowd. Obviously Talladega seats, I think the actual grandstand seat 80 to 90,000 people. Obviously the infield is packed with campers as always. It's never not been packed at Talladega. But the grandstands look to be pretty much 100% full. I don't think it was a sellout, but I'm going to say there's probably 80,000 people there, which is really nice to see. That's just in the grandstands. So from the scale, you know, it was a packed house, full house for the Talladega race, from the scale to the actual broadcast to then just the racing itself. We saw, I think they said during the broadcast, we saw more leaders and lead changes in the first stage of this race than we did in all of last fall's Talladega race. Now, last fall's Talladega race was an anomaly. It was more boring than most Talladegas. Remember, you had all the Stewart-Haas cars just dominating the whole race? That was kind of an anomaly, but the fact that one stage of today's race, what is that, like 40, 50, 60 laps, had more leaders, more lead changes than a whole race did at this track just a few months ago. That's crazy, and I think NASCAR deserves a ton of credit with all the aero changes. We give them so much crap for the aero changes they've made really since 2007. I'll give them credit for this one. They nailed the aero package for this super speedway race, and I hope they don't change a thing about it when we go to Daytona in July and when we go to Talladega again in October, because this race we saw today was absolutely perfect as far as the aero package was concerned. Whenever people say, what was the best era of super speedway racing? Most people say late 90s, early 2000s. This looked like a late 90s, early 2000s NASCAR plate race or super speedway race. So credit to NASCAR on this one. They made the perfect decisions this weekend. Let's go ahead and look at the top 20 finishing results. I'll talk about the winner now, because the winner of this race, I usually don't like to factor in the winner of a race as to what, how good a race was. Even if a guy I don't like wins, if the racing was good, I still think of it as a good race. But this week, I just have to say, Chase Elliott winning this race, his 4th career win, his first of the season, the first win this year for Chevy in the Cup Series, which is quite remarkable. Chase Elliott winning this race was huge for NASCAR. This was a huge day. I'll talk more about this at the end of the episode, but this was a huge day for NASCAR. Chase Elliott also won Stage 2. The Hendrick cars, the Chevys in general, did a very good job of working together throughout this race, and this is where I'll give Fox another big amount of credit. During the broadcast, they highlighted this. They did a great job of highlighting how the Chevys were working together, how they'd made it a point of emphasis this season at the plate tracks, at the super speedways. I keep calling them plate tracks. Technically not a plate track anymore. At the super speedways, the fact that Ford has looked so good last fall. I just talked about last fall, how the Fords at Stewart-Haas worked together. Joe Gibbs Racing at Daytona just this past February worked together to finish 1, 2, 3. To see the Chevys really make it really emphasize teamwork and make it work. Not only finishing in the top like 2 or 3 positions in Stage 2, but also winning the race and having Alex Bowman, 2 Hendrick cars there, finish at the top of the leaderboard. I thought that was really cool to see. It was very interesting to follow that at the end of this race as it was unfolding. Alex Bowman led some laps in this race, finished second. A great points day for him. I think we talked last week about how he's 21st in points coming into this race. He was 21st in points. Needed a big points day at Talladega. Got some stage points in Stage 2, and then obviously getting a second place finish in the race is huge for him, trying to get his way back up towards that top 16. Chase Elliott, though, I gotta stop and talk about him a little bit more. Getting the win on one of NASCAR's biggest stages, that's huge, not just for him, but also for the sport itself. I've long said that the biggest problem with NASCAR's popularity is that we don't really have a superstar that the average public can fall in love with. The guy that's winning the most races is Kyle Busch, and he has a very abrasive personality that not everyone's gonna like. A lot of these young guys like Chase Elliott that we've hyped up for a couple of years now really haven't performed that great. But to see Chase Elliott basically shine on NASCAR's biggest and brightest stage this afternoon was incredible. You saw the fans. After he won that race, nobody in those Talladega grandstands was leaving. They waited through the interviews. They waited through all the burnouts. There was nobody leaving those grandstands. They were glued to the track watching Chase Elliott celebrate his first win this year. And that's what NASCAR needs. Chase Elliott does not have a huge personality. He's not the perfect superstar, but he's the son of a talented, a successful, and popular driver in Bill Elliott. He's got that name carryover. He's got that generational, he bridges the gap between generations. To see Chase Elliott do well, that's only good news for NASCAR. So that was huge, not just for Chase, obviously getting a win, locking himself in the playoffs, but also for the sport of NASCAR and for Talladega. Great to see. Now, I'll be completely honest, I went online and looked at a couple different websites to figure out what the top 20 finishing results were, and some of them were slightly varied, so I'm not sure if these are official results. NASCAR, obviously, the finish ended under yellow, so NASCAR still might be putting some of these together, but this is probably pretty close. This might be accurate. Shout out to the 2 rookies, Ryan Preece and Daniel Hemrick, with top 5 finishes. That's great. I also talked last week about how the rookies have sucked this year. Ryan Preece and Daniel Hemrick have been unwatchable. They've been making mistakes. They've been running 30th. Not fun to watch at all. Both of them ran well in this race today and got great finishes. That's huge. That's awesome. Good to see as well. I'm proud for them. I'm happy for them, Joey Logano, I thought maybe had the best car all day. When he was leading, he was the one guy who seemed to be able to kind of protect multiple lines and hold on to the lead for more than just a few laps at a time. He ends up finishing 5th, so still comes out with a pretty solid finish. Kurt Busch, doesn't matter the track, continuing to impress me. Ryan Newman, he was involved in that first wreck, had the whole, I think it was left side of his door caved in. Somehow he came back to finish in the top 10. Not sure how he did that, but credit to Ryan Newman. Man, he is durable. Brendan Gaughan only runs like 2 or 3 races a year, but here he is finishing 8th. Dodge the wrecks. That's what'll happen. Also, you see Kyle Busch there gets a top 10. Another solid performance for Kyle Busch. In fact, what is it? His worst finish this year, I think, is still 10th. Even after Talladega, Kyle Busch still, his worst finish this year is 10th. That is stunning. Still the points leader, obviously. Almirola won the fall race at Talladega last year. 9th place today, led some laps. Good day for Almirola. Solid points day for Daniel Suarez. Brad Keselowski, another solid day. Penske looked really fast. Corey LaJoie there in 11th. Shout out to him. Shout out to the small teams that managed to come out and get strong finishes today. Austin Dillon, Ryan Blaney, Paul Menard. Ty Dillon there won his second stage of the season. That's right, Ty Dillon was able to drive through the field and actually win the first stage of today's race. Again, he won it straight up. Not on wacky pit strategy, not on fuel strategy. Ty Dillon just won the stage straight up. Same thing he did at Bristol a few weeks back. Crazy to know now that Ty Dillon has as many playoff points as Kevin Harvick does at this point in the season. Ty Dillon. Reed Sorensen, 18th, and then rounding out the top 20, a couple Gibbs cars, Eric Jones, Martin Truex Jr. Eric Jones probably deserved a better finish than that, but on the that final set of green flag pit stops, David Reagan just blocked him in his pit box. Like, David Reagan shot through his pit box and then just stopped in Eric Jones's pit box, and Jones had nowhere to go. So that slowed down Eric Jones, caused him to lose the draft. That's why he wasn't able to finish up in the top 10 where he'd been running most of the day, but still, good recovery. Martin Truex Jr. was my pick to win this weekend. Unfortunately, still does not have a cup win on a super speedway now, so we can start harping on that now that he has a short track win. But still, there you go. Those are your top 20 finishing results. Again, those might be 1 or 2 spots off, possibly. I have to go back. NASCAR still seems to be reviewing the finishing results to some extent. We already know that Chase Elliott won. There's just a few of these kind of towards the bottom that might be mixed up a little bit, but keep an eye out. Maybe some small changes here, but still, pretty good performance for a lot of these guys. Cool to see the underdogs succeed. I want to talk about the last lap and a half because we saw 3 different wrecks in the last final lap and a half of this race. Eric Jones spun out while in the back of that pack, managed to save it, managed to keep it off the wall, so he recovered and obviously finished in the top 20 like we saw a second ago. As they crossed the start-finish line to take the white flag, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. spun, hit the wall, hit it pretty hard, but was able to get the car down off the racing groove and out of the way, past the start-finish line, so they kept it green. And then on the backstretch, we saw a major crash. And now I said a minute ago how this race had 2001, 2002 super speedway race vibes. Kyle Larson went flipping down that back straightaway. It looked like Ryan Newman back in, what was it? Was it 2002 Ryan Newman or 2003, that iconic flip? It looked like Rusty Wallace flipping down the backstretch. It looked like a 2001, 2002 wreck at Talladega. Now, obviously, it was big hits for Jeffrey Earnhardt. Before that, we saw the wreck with Matt Benedetto getting into Chris Buescher. That was a huge, massive hit. Luckily, all these drivers walked away. They were checked and released from the infield care center. Earnhardt, Larson included. So glad nobody was hurt. But we saw at the end of this race, we did see a few big hits. We didn't see a big one at any point in this race. I think the biggest wreck we saw maybe took up 5 or 6 cars. We didn't see any 12 to 15 car wrecks like we sometimes see at Talladega. Just a lot of 3, 4 car wrecks. But we saw some big hits, and Larson sliding to that inside wall, almost getting airborne completely and going into the fence. Instead, he just kind of flipped along the wall there a few times. I haven't seen a Gen 6 car flip like that. That was a weird flip. I wish I could show you guys a good replay, but NASCAR Fox are weird about showing footage, even just a couple second clips. So I don't know if I can't show you guys that, but if you watched the race, you saw it and you know what I'm talking about. It felt like a throwback, in a sense. The whole final sequence was kind of wild. I think NASCAR played it correctly. They threw the caution when Larson wrecked. They threw it before he even started flipping. So once that 3 or 4 cars wrecked down the backstretch, NASCAR threw the yellow. I thought it was smart of them to not throw the caution for Eric Jones. He spun out, didn't hit anything, and he was in the very back of the pack. Nobody was driving past him. I thought that was smart to let it go green. Even when Stenhouse wrecked, the fact that he was also in the back of the pack and managed to get that car off the racing surface very quickly, and it was past the start-finish line, I again think NASCAR was smart not to throw the yellow for that as well. They really tried to let this finish end under green, but with the big multi-car wreck and obviously Larson flipping, you got to throw a caution right away. NASCAR says that if at any point the driver's safety is under concern, they'll throw the caution. Obviously, when you have a guy flipping over, you got to throw the yellow. So NASCAR, I think, played this final stage perfectly when it comes to calling penalties in that sense. So really, no major controversies out of this one, at least that I can see. All right, I've done enough talking about this type of stuff. Let's put this thing on the Groovy gauge and get done with it. So a brief review of this Groovy gauge here. I rate every single Cup Series race, basically 0 to 100, how entertaining, how fun it was to watch from a fan's perspective, from an objective fan's perspective. I'm not usually focused on who won, where people finished. I'm just focused on the racing itself. Passing, leaders, the wrecks, possibly, drama, that type of stuff. That's what I'm focused on. And this year, remember, we've only really had one race. I think it was Auto Club that I thought was kind of a negative race, not a great race. We've had a few pretty darn awesome ones. Bristol a couple weeks ago, I gave it a 95% on the Groovy gauge. It is by far the highest rated race I have given this year. Talladega's coming for it. I'm going to give today's Geico 500 at Talladega Superspeedway on the Groovy gauge. I'm going to give it a 98%. just a sliver at the top there. Again, I gotta leave there some room to grow. There could be a race, I don't know how, but there could be a race better than this one later in the year. Maybe the second Daytona, maybe the second Talladega, but this race today is going to be tough to beat. It was incredible. I've already kind of explained in a nutshell why I thought this race was so entertaining, why I thought this race was so fun. It felt like the good old glory days of NASCAR again. It really did. From the big crowd, the good weather, the solid broadcast. I know you guys are annoyed with the commercials, but they gotta do what they gotta do. Solid broadcast, great racing, and we really didn't see any horrendous wrecks. I know there's a portion of NASCAR fans that really get disturbed when we see wrecks. I'm one of those fans, and I'm very open about this. I don't mind a few wrecks here and there. Obviously, some of those big hits, you hate to see that. I'm glad Larson was okay. I'm glad DiBenedetto and Buescher were okay. I'm glad Earnhardt was okay. You hate to see huge wrecks like that, but I don't mind some wrecks. I actually think wrecks add to the entertainment, and especially at Talladega, you kind of expect a few big wrecks. This race, in general, just felt like the glory days of NASCAR. The days when NASCAR was at the forefront of every American sports fan's mind. Not every American sports fan watched NASCAR on a regular basis, but everyone was aware of NASCAR. Everyone knew when Talladega was, and a lot of people would tune in. Casual sports fans would tune into Talladega to see the spectacle. Today's race felt a lot like those good old glory days. All the way to Chase Elliott, a fan favorite. He's the closest thing we have to a Dale Earnhardt Jr. type in the series today. All the way to him winning, the crowd going wild, the Twitter going wild. It doesn't really get that much better than this. If you're just a hardcore NASCAR fan, a hardcore fan of the sport for many years, or even just a newer fan of the sport who's looking for some bright glimpse into what could be a very promising future for the sport, this is the day that you hope for every time you wake up on Sunday. When I wake up Sunday morning of a race day, this is the type of race I hope we see. One with tons of drama, one with tons of action, one that just looks and feels like a major worldwide, world-class sporting event. And we saw that today. That's what we saw today from pretty much start to finish. And I think, objectively speaking, every NASCAR fan should be pleased with the product we saw on track today. I want to hear what everyone thinks. What was your favorite part of today? What was your least favorite part of today? What are you excited about going forward? I think there's a lot that we can look forward to after today's race. Anyway, you guys, thank you so much for watching. You can follow me again on Instagram, Twitter, continue the conversation over there. You can also check out the description down below and get yourself an Out of the Groove t-shirt to support me, support the show. You can also support me on Patreon, like these amazing folks. Shout out to Michael Harrison at Givas of the Stars, selfishgifts.com, Mentally Defective Cameron James, John Koblentz, Jason R. Long, Wesley Donaldson, Isaac Dennison, Mika Suzuki, iFantasyRace.com, Ross Corlett, TheRacingInsiders.com, and the rest of these amazing Patreon supporters. I love that we keep adding new names on here. I really appreciate the support. If you also want to support me and support the show, you can check out that top link down in the description. I really appreciate it. I also want to give a shout out to David Campbell from DCP Media. He sent me these awesome prints from my first ever World of Outlaws race. If you remember, a couple weeks ago I went to my first ever dirt race, World of Outlaws at Devil's Bowl Speedway. He was a photographer at that race and actually messaged me on Instagram and sent me these awesome prints of photos he took from that actual race. So dirt racing community really coming up clutch. That's really nice of you. Check him out. SeeMyMind.com is his website. Check out some of his work. I'll put that down in the description as well. Thanks, man, for sending me these. I gotta get them framed. Anyway, that's gonna do it, you guys. Really fun day to be a NASCAR fan, I must say. I'll see you guys again later this week. Got some more episodes before this next weekend's race. So I'll see you guys then. Thank you so much for watching, y'all. Have a good one.